He humiliated her at the high-security checkpoint, dumping her life onto the cold floor for sport. But when a custom Golden Eagle spun into view, the entire armed facility didn't just go silent. It snapped to attention. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to slice through the mountain peaks as Kaylin Vance joined the queue at the primary checkpoint of Site Blackwood. She was a study in deliberate anonymity. Her travel clothes were worn but clean, her light brown hair pulled back in a simple, functional ponytail. At 30, she possessed a quiet stillness that most people would mistake for timidity. Only a trained eye would notice the web of faint, silvery scars along her jawline, or the way her calm blue eyes didn't just see, but assessed every security camera, every guard's posture, every shadow. Site Blackwood was a place that didn't officially exist. Nestled deep within a national forest, it was a black, brutalist fortress of concrete and steel, ringed by layers of electrified fencing and motion sensors. It was the central nervous system for some of the nation's most clandestine operations. The morning rush was a controlled chaos of contractors in steel-toed boots, analysts clutching coffee thermoses, and junior officers hurrying to their morning briefs. Kaylin watched it all with the detached patience of someone who had seen far more chaotic scenes. Pacing behind the main security desk was Captain Marcus Thorne. His uniform was impeccably starched, his posture radiating an aggressive ambition that soured the air around him. "Move it along," he barked at a fumbling engineer. "This isn't a Starbucks. Have your credentials ready." The other guards tensed whenever he passed, their respect born of fear, not admiration. Thorne was young, hungry, and believed the surest way up the ladder was by stepping on the fingers of those below. When Kaylin reached the counter, she presented her minimalist documentation. The laminated card showed her face and a name, but little else, just a contractor designation and a clearance level that seemed oddly basic for such a high-security facility. "Purpose of visit?" the guard asked, his voice monotone. "I have a meeting with Director Sharma," Kaylin replied, her voice low and even. The name dropped like a stone in a silent pond. Captain Thorne, who had been berating a private for the scuff on his boots, immediately strode over. He snatched the ID from the counter, his eyes sweeping over Kaylin's worn jeans and simple jacket with undisguised disdain. "Director Sharma doesn't take unscheduled appointments with civilians," he sneered, his voice loud enough for the entire checkpoint to hear. "Especially not ones who look like they just hiked out of the woods." Behind him, Master Sergeant Elias Croft, a man whose salt and pepper hair and weathered face spoke of decades of service, looked up from his monitoring station. His gaze met Kaylin's for a fraction of a second. A flicker of something, not recognition, but professional curiosity, crossed his features. He saw the way she stood, perfectly balanced, her hands relaxed but ready. It was a posture he hadn't seen in a civilian. Ever. "Check again," Kaylin said, her voice unshaken. Thorne's jaw tightened. He saw her calmness not as confidence, but as a challenge to his authority. "Step aside," he commanded, nodding to two junior guards. "You've been selected for a random additional security screening." The waiting area grew quiet. The morning's entertainment had begun. As Kaylin was escorted to a sterile clearing in the center of the room, she could feel dozens of eyes on her. She complied without expression, her gaze fixed on a distant fire extinguisher as Thorne circled her like a shark. "Arms out," he ordered. She obeyed. "The bag, too." He gestured to the simple canvas backpack slung over her shoulder. A barely perceptible pause. "I would prefer you didn't do that," Kaylin said, her tone still maddeningly level. A ripple of murmurs went through the onlookers. No one told Captain Thorne what to do. "This is a secure military installation, not a public library," he shot back, his voice dripping with condescension. "You don't get preferences here." He nodded to his men, who roughly pulled the backpack from her. One of them, a young woman named Specialist Maya Jensen, met Kaylin's eyes with a flash of apology in her own. "Nothing to hide, right?" Thorne said, taking the bag himself. And with a dramatic flourish, he upended it, dumping its contents onto the cold, polished concrete floor. A collection of mundane items tumbled out, scattering across the floor. A few sets of simple, dark-colored clothes. A worn paperback novel. A small, well-organized first aid kit. A leather-bound journal. Thorne nudged the pathetic pile with the toe of his gleaming black boot. "All this fuss over your dirty laundry," he scoffed, playing to his audience. Kaylin remained perfectly still, a statue of composure. Only the slight tightening of her jaw betrayed any reaction. Her eyes, however, were not on Thorne. They were on Master Sergeant Croft, who had risen slightly from his chair. His attention wasn't on the scattered belongings, but on Kaylin's wrist, which had been momentarily exposed as the backpack was pulled away. He'd seen it clearly for a second. A small, stylized tattoo of a wolf's head, inked in black. It was a symbol he'd only ever seen in one place. A classified after-action report from a mission that had become the stuff of whispered legend. Thorne, oblivious, picked up the leather journal. He thumbed through the pages with deliberate, insulting slowness. "Let's see what secrets a vagrant has that warrant a meeting with the director," he said, his voice booming in the now silent room. Several of the waiting personnel shifted uncomfortably. This had gone far beyond a standard security check. It was a public humiliation. As Thorne lifted the journal, threatening to read from it aloud, Kaylin spoke again, her voice cutting through the tension. "Captain," she said calmly, "there is one more item in that bag you should be aware of." Thorne laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Oh, a threat now, is it?" He gave the empty backpack a final, contemptuous kick, sending it skidding across the floor. "Search complete. Nothing dangerous here." The bag spun, hit the leg of a metal bench, and then it happened. From a hidden side pocket, something heavy and metallic slid free. It wasn't a clumsy tumble, but an almost elegant emergence. It spun lazily across the polished floor, a macabre compass needle of gleaming metal. The harsh fluorescent lights caught its surface, glinting off a custom titanium gold finish. Laser etched onto the slide, just above the ejection port, was a perfect, snarling wolf's head. A custom desert eagle. Unmistakable. Mythical. The room didn't just go silent. It felt as if all the air had been sucked out of it. The weapon came to a rest, pointing directly at Master Sergeant Croft, like an accusing finger. His face drained of all color. His breath hitched. "Good God," someone whispered from the line. Specialist Jensen's eyes widened in disbelief. "Is that the wolf's fang?" she breathed, the name of the legendary weapon spoken like a prayer. Croft found his voice, though it was barely a tremor. "It is," he confirmed, his eyes locked on Kaylin. Everyone in military intelligence knew the story, though most dismissed it as a ghost story to scare new recruits. 5 years ago, the Istanbul evacuation. A diplomatic compound seized by a splinter cell of elite mercenaries. 38 hostages. Official channels were paralyzed. But a lone operative, codenamed Echo, had infiltrated the compound, eliminated the entire mercenary team, and gotten every single hostage out alive, despite being wounded multiple times. The operative's signature weapon, a custom gold Desert Eagle with a wolf's head emblem, had become a legend. A legend whose owner was reported killed in action during the extraction. Kaylin walked forward calmly, the crowd of onlookers parting before her, as if she carried an invisible, high-voltage charge. She knelt, picking up the weapon with a practiced ease that was terrifying in its familiarity. She checked the safety, her movements fluid and economical, before sliding it into a shoulder holster concealed perfectly beneath her simple jacket. When she straightened up, the world had changed. Master Sergeant Elias Croft was standing at rigid, perfect attention, his arms snapped into the sharpest salute of his career. His voice, when he spoke, was thick with awe and emotion. "Echo," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "We thought you were dead, ma'am." One by one, like a current passing through the room, recognition dawned. A grizzled master gunnery sergeant by the coffee machine slowly stood and brought his hand to his brow in a salute. Two colonels who had been chatting by the elevator stiffened, their faces masks of astonishment, and saluted. An intelligence officer dropped her clipboard with a clatter that echoed in the stunned silence. Captain Thorne's face was a comical canvas of confusion and dawning horror. "What is this? What's going on?" he demanded, his authority evaporating like mist in the sun. "Captain," a commanding, female voice cut through the air from the entrance. "You have just publicly harassed the sole recipient of the Obsidian Star still inactive, albeit classified, service." Director Anya Sharma stood in the doorway. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her uniform adorned with the quiet dignity of decorations earned in the field, not at parades. Her piercing, intelligent eyes surveyed the scene, the scattered clothes, the humbled captain, and the woman standing at the center of it all. The room stiffened further as Sharma crossed the floor to where Kalen stood. To everyone's absolute shock, the director of Site Blackwood, a woman known for her ironclad adherence to protocol, knelt down herself. With her own hands, she began to gather Kalen's scattered belongings. "The last time I saw this weapon," Sharma announced to the silent, watching room, her voice resonating with cold fury. "Major Vance was using it to save 38 hostages in Istanbul while bleeding from 4 separate gunshot wounds." She handed the leather journal back to Kalen with a reverence that was more potent than any verbal praise. "Your after-action report is 5 years overdue, Major." A ghost of a smile touched Kalen's lips. "I got delayed, Director." Captain Thorne had gone chalk white. The name, the rank, the location. The pieces clicked into place in his mind with the sickening finality of a guillotine blade. His career, his ambition, his entire future flashed before his eyes and then vanished. Director Sharma straightened up, her gaze sweeping across the room. "As you were," she said, and the salutes dropped, though the rigid postures remained. She turned her icy glare on Thorne. "Captain, report to my office at 0800 tomorrow. We'll be discussing your reassignment." Reassignment from Site Blackwood was a career death sentence. Exile to a forgotten listening post in the Aleutians, or worse, a desk job cataloging supplies in North Dakota. It was the end. But then, Kalen surprised everyone by intervening. "Director," she said calmly, "the captain was doing his job. Security at this facility should be tight." She then turned her unreadable blue eyes on Thorne. "But next time, Captain, remember that respect is free." The quiet statement, delivered with neither malice nor triumph, was more devastating than any shouted reprimand. Thorne, his career hanging by the thinnest of threads, could only manage a choked, "Yes, ma'am." He stood there, a man utterly broken, stripped of his pride and authority in front of the very people he sought to intimidate. The lesson was seared into the memory of everyone present. True authority wasn't in a uniform or a rank. It was in the quiet confidence of a woman who had walked through fire and returned. As the checkpoint slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, the atmosphere was forever changed. The personnel moved with a new energy, their conversations hushed, their eyes repeatedly glancing towards the living legend in their midst. Specialist Jensen, her face flushed with a mixture of awe and shame for her role in the incident, carefully repacked Kalen's bag and brought it to her. "Ma'am," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "it's an honor." Kalen gave her a small, reassuring nod. "You showed hesitation, Specialist, and empathy. Don't lose that." Just then, Master Sergeant Croft approached, his weathered face etched with an emotion he hadn't shown in years. "Major," he began, his voice thick. "Echo, it's an honor. My cousin David, he was on the diplomatic staff in Istanbul. You saved him." Kalen's professional mask softened, replaced by a genuine warmth that transformed her face. "How is he now, Sergeant?" A watery smile touched Croft's lips. "He's married. 2 kids. He named his daughter Kayla. We never knew your real name, just the legend." He said the echo of your gunfire was the most beautiful sound he ever heard, because it meant help had arrived. "Tell David the Phantom sends her regards," Kalen said, using an old, informal call sign. The moment of connection was a powerful reminder of the real-world consequences of the abstract operations they conducted. It wasn't about geopolitics. It was about people like David getting to go home and name their children. Director Sharma placed a hand on Kalen's shoulder, her expression grim. The brief respite was over. "We need to talk. Your return is timely." The threat you warned us about 5 years ago has materialized. Kalen's face grew serious once more. That's why I'm here. They began to walk towards the secure elevators that led to the facility's core, the sanctum sanctorum of Site Blackwood. As they moved, personnel flattened themselves against the walls, nodding respectfully or offering quiet salutes. The transformation from her arrival as a nobody was absolute. Kalen herself seemed to move differently now, her posture more commanding, her eyes sharp and assessing, the role of the unremarkable civilian shed like a skin. 5 years in the dark, Kalen, Sharma said quietly as they waited for the elevator. I was beginning to think your warnings had been forgotten. Never forgotten, Sharma replied firmly. But they were inconvenient. Political winds shift. Budgets are reallocated. You know the game. Some things never change, Kalen murmured, her hand unconsciously brushing against the holstered Desert Eagle. The elevator doors slid shut, enclosing them in a silent, secure box. Only then did Sharma allow her stern facade to crack. We really did think you were gone, Echo. After Tangier, when your tracker went dark, the extraction team found blood. Your blood. But no body. That was the point, Kalen replied, her voice cold. I needed everyone to believe I was gone, especially those within our own ranks. The intel suggested the leak was high level. The elevator descended deep into the earth. This was the true heart of Site Blackwood, a place few ever saw. Did you identify the source? Sharma asked. That's why I'm here, Kalen repeated, her tone even more grim this time. The story was no longer about a hero's return. It was about the hunt for a traitor. The elevator doors opened into a dimly lit, circular operations center. Screens glowed with satellite feeds, data streams, and encrypted communications from around the globe. A handful of senior officers worked in focused silence, their conversations hushed and brief. As Sharma and Kalen entered, all activity ceased. Colonel Javier Dominguez, the head of special operations, a man known for his unflappable demeanor, actually dropped his coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. Echo, he whispered, using her old field designation. It's really you. In the flesh, Javier, Kalen replied with a wry twist of her lips. Disappointed? The colonel's face flushed. Of course not. Just pleasantly surprised. Sharma led Kalen to a soundproofed briefing room off the main floor. Once the heavy door was sealed, she activated a series of security protocols, including a jammer that blocked all electronic surveillance. Old school, she explained, pulling a pen and a paper notepad from a locked drawer. Some conversations shouldn't leave a digital trail. Even here, Kalen nodded approvingly. The organization I've been tracking calls itself the Aegis Collective. Ironic, Sharma noted. Aegis was a shield of protection. They see themselves as protectors, Kalen clarified, of the future. They're comprised of former intelligence officers, high-ranking military personnel, and government officials from a dozen nations. Their core belief is that traditional nation-states are obsolete, weak, and destined to fail. They want to impose a new world order, governed by what they call the competent few. Garden-variety megalomaniacs, Sharma observed, though her expression was grave. With the resources of a superpower, Kalen countered. They've infiltrated multiple agencies, commands, and governments. And they're in the final stages of an operation they call Shattered Mirror. Timetable: 72 hours, based on the last intercept I got before my cover was compromised. She paused. The Istanbul incident wasn't a random hostage crisis. It was orchestrated by them. A test run to see if they could manufacture a crisis to justify implementing certain global security protocols. The hostages were chosen because they had information that could have exposed the collective's early movements. The mercenaries were hired to eliminate them under the cover of an international incident. Sharma stared at her, horrified. They were willing to sacrifice all those people for a political exercise. Eager to, Kalen corrected, her voice flat. When I realized what was happening, I changed the mission parameters. Instead of a quiet extraction of a few key assets, I made it loud. Saved everyone. made it impossible to cover up. I created a legend so compelling that it overshadowed the truth. And that's why they tried to kill me in Tangier. I was never supposed to figure it out. And now, Sharma asked, her mind racing. Now, they believe one of their own is arriving at Site Blackwood today. Kaylin's expression was grimly triumphant. She reached into an inner pocket of her jacket and produced another ID card. This one was pristine, featuring a different name, Margot Thorne, System Specialist, and the highest level security clearance. It looked utterly authentic, down to the specialized holographic features that were supposedly impossible to duplicate. She's been authorized by the Secretary of Defense himself to perform a security audit on our primary orbital defense platform, Norse, Kaylin explained. Sharma's eyes widened in horror. Norse, control of America's autonomous orbital defense network, would give them leverage over every major power on Earth. The perfect tool for their competent few to impose their new world order. The Secretary is one of them, Sharma realized aloud. Or being manipulated by one of them, Kaylin said. Either way, this authorization is genuine. It's passed through all the proper channels. They think their agent is about to walk through the front door and be handed the keys to the kingdom. Sharma looked at Kaylin, understanding dawning in her eyes. And you plan to be that woman. I already am that woman, Kaylin said softly. The plan was audacious, born of 5 years of solitude and a singular, burning purpose. Kaylin would assume the identity of Margot Thorne, walk into the lion's den, and use the enemy's own trap to dismantle their entire operation from the inside. But she couldn't do it alone. I need a team I can trust. Absolutely, Kaylin stated, her voice leaving no room for argument. People with no possible connection to the Aegis Collective. That young specialist, Jensen, Sharma suggested immediately. Recruited directly from MIT. Brilliant cryptographer with no political ties. Add her to the list, Kaylin agreed. And Master Sergeant Croft. His personal connection to Istanbul gives him a motivation that can't be bought or coerced. Sharma nodded, making notes on her paper pad. Anyone else? Kaylin considered for a moment, a calculated look in her eyes. Captain Thorne. The director looked up, stunned. The man who just humiliated you? Are you certain? His arrogance makes him predictable, Kaylin explained. And his naked ambition makes him the last person to be involved in a shadow organization that requires subtlety and patience. He wants public recognition too badly. His surprise at my identity was genuine. We can use him. A fair, if ruthless, assessment, Sharma conceded. I'll have them assembled within the hour. Later, as the hastily assembled team gathered in the command center, the transformation was complete. Kaylin stood before them, no longer the unassuming civilian, but Major Vance, a commander in her element. She laid out the intelligence and the plan with crisp, clear precision. Specialist Jensen's eyes shone with a mixture of terror and excitement. Sergeant Croft's face was a mask of grim determination, and Captain Thorne, humbled and eager to redeem himself, listened with an intensity he had never before shown in his life. He was being given a chance to be part of something legendary, and he knew it. As the final briefing for Operation Shattered Mirror concluded, Kaylin stood before the main tactical screen, which displayed a schematic of the Norse control systems. The woman whose name had been on a memorial wall for 5 years was gone, replaced by someone forged in betrayal and tempered by solitude. Someone who understood that true power lay not in weapons or authority, but in the willingness to stand against impossible odds when no one else would. Her hand rested on the cool, familiar grip of her golden desert eagle. It caught the light from the screens, a beacon in the dimly lit command center, a reminder of promises kept and debts yet to be paid. The mission was no longer just about stopping an enemy. It was about reaffirming the very ideal that had been betrayed, that individuals of courage could still change the world. A Legend's return has exposed a conspiracy that could shatter the world. Is true heroism found in quiet sacrifice, or in the courage to stand up when it matters most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please comment with respect. If this story moved you and you want to see what Echo does next, subscribe to the channel and share this video with a friend. The legend is just getting started.